You know what they say, when Sony announces a Spider-Man project, God flips a coin. Because we have seen the highest of highs in Spider-Man material. No Way Home, a mega hit crowd-pleasing blockbuster. Into the Spider-Verse, maybe the most significant animated film in the last decade, just in terms of like how it has pushed the industry. We got great cartoons, amazing video games, and then on the other hand, we got Madam Web, we got Craven, we got Venom Let There Be Carnage, we got all those movies they cancel like Hypno Hustler and El Muerto. So more than any other studio, I feel like it is boom or bust with Sony. And I think when Sony releases their trailers, we can usually get a good sense of which one we're getting. Sometimes they're not perfect, Far From Home wasn't as good as the other two Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, but for the most part, you're getting extremes. I don't know why, I can't explain it. Sure, it has something to do with Sony and Amy Pascal and Chris Lord and Phil Miller, who work on a lot of these projects now. But even after we saw images from Spider-Noir, which is the name of this show, by the way, it's not Spider-Man Noir, it's just Spider-Noir. Even after we saw our first images, I was still a little hesitant. Is this gonna work? Are we gonna get an Into the Spider-Verse level project, or are we going to get a Madam Web level project? And we finally saw the trailers, that's right, two, same, but different in a way that's interesting, for Spider-Noir. And I gotta say, the coin toss landed on whatever the good option is, because this looks great. This show looks like so much fun. I just want to talk about it big picture. I'm not going to break down the trailer and figure out who's in every shot or anything. I just want to give you an idea of what this show is, what I'm excited about, and what I'm very curious about. There's plenty of all of that. Also, my cat Mortimer is sitting on my lap right now. He's here because this show seems to have what maybe will be the closest thing we've ever had to a live action version of Black Cat. Felicia Hardy, yes, I know Felicia Hardy was in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but she didn't do anything besides tell Harry where the files were or something. But this version Black Cat we're getting, while she will not be the typical Black Cat, will do something, I assume, a little more Black Catty than Jin Urso's one. I'm sure the first question most people will ask when they see this is, wait, what is this? And then you go, it's a Spider-Man show. It's on Amazon and kind of MGM, which we'll get to. And they'll say, oh, is this the same character from Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse very briefly at the end? And my answer to that is no, this is not the same character. It is a very similar character. He looks the same. He is played by the same actor. But just by virtue of the fact that this character's name is Ben Riley, and in Into the Spider-Verse, that Spider-Man says his name is Peter Parker. Also, I doubt he's going to be like, hey, this reminds me of that pig I know. However, I do think there is a way you could work the Spider-Verse mythology and story into this character in a way that would be fun, because, and we'll get to it, this character's kind of a weirdo. It's kind of a mess. And I could see him just saying oh, this reminds me of that time I was in the multiverse with the pig and the robot. And everybody go, okay, whatever you say, Spider-Man Noir. Or Spider-Noir, or The Spider, which is apparently what this character is going to be called, which makes sense because it's supposed to feel like, the Shadow or the Phantom or some of those old pulp characters from the 30s. Speaking of the 30s, this takes place in the 30s. Where in the 30s? I don't know. That's interesting to me because in his intro and Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Noir is very clear that he likes to punch Nazis, and unless he can see the future, that means he's in a specific part of the 1930s then, at least. And yeah, way before America got involved in World War II. Now, there could still be Nazis around these fighting. Either way, it seems like this is going to be maybe a pre-Nazis Spider-Man War? I don't know. If he said 40s, I would be like, oh, he's gonna fight Nazis. But now I'm not as sure about that. I hope saying that word all these times didn't get me demonetized. Anyway, so Nicolas Cage is playing the Spider. Who is Ben Riley in this universe? If you don't know who Ben Riley is, I might have made a Marvel Snap video about it back in the day, but basically, he is a clone of Peter Parker, who's not necessarily the evil clone, but he's the worst clone. He's haunted by the ghosts of his past. He lives in Las Vegas sometimes, and sometimes he does go full bad. But I think that's an interesting choice here, because if this was Peter Parker, I guarantee you would have so many people online be like, where's Mary Jane? Why can't he be married to Mary Jane? I might be one of them, because I do think it's kind of annoying that in a lot of Spider media, he just cannot be with this person. It just seems like they're doing it because it's oh, we don't want him to be too comfortable. Anyway, make him a different character. Make him Ben Riley. That's a perfect way to deal with this. Now, Ben Riley does have a girlfriend in the comics, but I don't think we're going to get into her here at least. But yeah, we don't need to get into the usual Spider-Man baggage. Now, I don't know if this version of Ben Riley is a clone of a Peter Parker, or if he's just some guy who is named Ben Riley and had the Spider-Man stuff happen to him. And hey, maybe if that's what we learned in season 1, I'm just another guy named Ben Riley. Maybe in the end of this season or something, another Nicolas Cage shows up and he's like, hey, you're Peter Parker, right? And it's oh my God, there's two of them. We turn out, oh, he was cloned and he had different memories or something like that. I don't think they need to do that, but they could. It's something they have options. I will say this performance, from what we see in the trailer, we're getting a Nic Cage who is very committed. He's very campy. I love his energy. Now, right now, Nic Cage is 62 years old. Now, he's no spring chicken. Definitely the oldest Spider-Man on screen, even though, like I said, they're calling him the Spider. But still, that is interesting, right? Old guy Spider-Man, but not exactly like the traditional old man Logan. More in that the heroes of the film noir era and Spider-Man don't always like line up. Film noir characters tend to be gruffer, older, like they've seen it all, whereas Spider-Man is young, and that's a big part of his selling point. Even if he's not a teenager, like he's one of the younger heroes in Marvel Comics when you put him next to like Captain America and Iron Man. We do know, I believe, that this version of Ben Reilly fought in World War I, which is interesting, which makes sense time-wise if he's a 60-year-old man in the 30s. I would assume he would be involved in World War I. It seems like that trauma will have affected him in an interesting way, but it also feels like there's maybe something else in his life that happened, some other tragedy that we'll probably learn over time. I believe it was Miller or Lord said that this character has already had his Chinatown moment, and not to spoil Chinatown, but it is a very famous film noir movie about a character who goes up against this system and finds out you can't beat it. Like, it's too strong. I don't know. The movie came out 50 years ago. You have plenty of time to watch it. I saw them describing this version of Ben Reilly as 70% Humphrey Bogart, which makes sense, like cool classic movie star, and then 30% Bugs Bunny, which I buy, considering in the trailer, we do see him having some big Spider-Man fights and dancing around doing Nic Cage stuff. But like, if it was 100% Humphrey Bogart, it's like, get somebody else. There are very few actors like Nic Cage that can bring that 30% and make that character still feel real, but also like a cartoon character. So that's Nic Cage. Let's talk about the show in general. Looks amazing. Like, not like amazing, like this is the greatest thing ever filmed, but like, it's got style. It seems like a well-shot piece of television. We see using different lenses and focal lengths and things like that to make interesting shots. That is cool. The other thing that's really interesting about this show is being presented in both black and white and color. Now, originally, I was like, we gotta watch it in black and white. That's what it is. But looking at the color version, I think the color version actually looks really good. It's not just that they didn't really worry about like the colors, they were really concerned with the black and white version, but hey, here's a color version for people who don't watch black and white stuff because, I don't know, they just don't like it. It seems like they did a lot of work grading this, like making this feel the same as the black and white version. Some of the colors are nice. I don't know. I can be convinced either way. Maybe I'll watch both, but I am not fully convinced black and white is the only way to go for this. Especially because, like, we don't know what we're going to be looking at, really. We've seen Spider-Man Noir fight in a dark bar, but that's like a character in black and white fighting in a dimly lit black and white spot. But if, let's say, a Cat Hardy scene does have really fun colors, like maybe that'll be fun to watch in color. I don't know. We see the spider fighting and dancing. Looks great. We see the spider doing web slinging. That looks pretty good too. People in the Nando Movies Discord were talking about, hey, that looks so good. That might be the last shot of the thing. And like, thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that probably will be. I don't think we're necessarily going to surf Dracula it, like he's going to have to earn his web slinging. But I think this is a character who has done web slinging before. And like, because it is expensive, they don't want to show it constantly. But they do want to have a nice one, their big final swing at the end of the show. Let's talk about the costume. Without the hat, it does not read to me as Spider-Noir, even though traditionally in the comics, Spider-Man Noir does not have that. The hat and the trench coat together with the black costume, I think is a really iconic look. And even though it's silly, because it is, like, why would Spider-Man wear a hat? It's a comic book. Comic books are supposed to be fun. And I do think after seeing Into the Spider-Verse, like, this is just a better look for this character. Also, because this idea of a Spider-Man in a, like, black outfit, we did that in one of the live-action Spider-Man movies with the Night Monkey. So, we need to do something else for Spider-Noir. But yeah, overall, like, I don't think you can see this trailer and not be at least a little excited about it, just based on the visuals. The visuals are cool. We don't learn too much about the story of the season. Season 1, there are apparently 8 episodes. I think that's great. Don't want to give it all away. We do know some characters are going to be in here, and I think we get looks at a couple of them. Silvermane's played by Brendan Gleeson. He is traditionally, in Spider-Man comics, a mob boss. There are a couple of Spider-Man mob bosses, like Hammerhead and Tombstone and Silvermane, that kind of show up, and if there's a mob plot, you know, they're in there. Kingpin obviously is also that. But those guys are more like mafiosos, especially Silvermane and Hammerhead. Silvermane, the one thing that's really interesting about him usually is he's like got a robot body a lot of the time. Not obviously not always. He was born with a regular body. Apparently he created a robot body for himself so that he could live forever. I don't know if they're going to do that with this version of the character. It kind of seems like maybe they wanted a big boss who could be in charge of everything, and they needed a character who wasn't going to be used in anything in the future, and like has other personality traits you can draw from. But who knows? Maybe at the end of the season, Spider-Noir is going to cut his head off, and then one of the bad guys is going to put it on a robot. I don't know. Then you have looks at some other characters that might be villains. I'd say the one that we know the most about now is Kat Hardy. She's played by Sinners' Lee Jun-lee. As someone who has both always really liked the character of Black Cat, but always understood why she didn't make sense in any of the movies, because that's not the Spider-Man journey we're trying to tell. Like, this is a perfect place for her. She's 100% a film noir character. She is a femme fatale. She's got a secret, a dark side. She's sexy, but it's like, ooh, what's her deal? Can I trust her? Is she gonna steal from me? Is she gonna kill me? This version maybe is like a singer too. That's interesting. You know, does she have her usual luck-based superpowers? Because this fun thing about Black Cat, besides being like a master thief, she also, I believe from Kingpin, got the ability to make other people unlucky. And like, yeah, it's like a black cat crossing your path. Maybe, and I think this is how I would do it if I were making the show, I would have that be like a bit of her character, like lore. Be like, oh, people are always unlucky around me, but you never have to get into why, and maybe it's a superpower. You know, I think that can be fun. But like I said, we don't know if she's going to be a hero or a villain, but hey, she's a named Spider-Man character at least. And if anybody's confused, like why Hardy, Felicia Hardy is the name of the Black Cat. And then you've got a bunch of guys that you only see for like a second. There are only a couple that have been confirmed. One is Sandman. You can see a guy with sand on his face. He's played by Jack Houston from Boardwalk Empire and Fargo. You probably recognize him from Boardwalk Empire as the guy with the mask on his face, speaking of World War I. Originally, I kind of thought Sandman maybe wouldn't have powers, because part of me is like, okay, Spider-Man has powers, sure, but they don't have to be swinging around all the time. It can just be stuff that a normal guy can do, which is punch, but he punches extra hard, and he has a spider sense, which means he can kind of block really well. But if they wanted to play this more grounded, they totally could, and you could take Spider-Man characters like Black Cat and twist them into a noir villain without giving them like explicit superpowers. I don't know what I thought Sandman would be, but it seems like he's at least going to be near sand at some point, and maybe he is going to be part sand, and that is cool. We haven't seen like a proper Sandman since, I guess we saw Thomas Hayden Church in No Way Home, and then we kind of saw Sandman in Far From Home, kind of. But I think it could be fun to see like one Spider-Man fight a Sandman. Also, like, it's interesting because I believe Sandman is one of those characters, and maybe this will be kind of a theme with these guys, that was affected by radioactive sand. So we're getting like bitten by a radioactive spider, obviously, but maybe this is going to dovetail into like Manhattan Project, nuclear testing stuff. I don't know. Then I'll say the next like dead ringer here is we see somebody with electricity hands. That's very clearly probably Electro. They could make it Shocker if they wanted, and have it just be that he's pretty much Electro, but just like we're going to use Shocker because he's not as important. And I do think there are a lot of rules, and there's a lot of like, hey, we're going to put him in a movie, so probably don't use him. You can use him, but not this guy. And if you want to use this guy, submit for that guy. But Electro, cool. Always a fun villain to fight. Right now, if we have Sandman and Electro, we have who I think are probably Spider-Man's two most powerful villains. If you just go by like how hard they are to fight, what they can do, I don't know, maybe Hydro Man gets thrown in there too. But like Spider-Man's got a lot of villains, and it's like a guy with extra arms, or like the concept of sand, and like these are the more serious ones. We also see a guy that's on fire and not fazed by it. People suggested this is Molten Man. He's really the only Spider-Man fire-themed villain. Yeah, they had Butane in that Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show. But like, I think he's like an Iron Man villain or something. Molten Man is like a guy who can turn on fire more in like a lava kind of way, but still similar. I'm not convinced this isn't Electro or Sandman, two characters that are traditionally fireproof. This guy's necessarily starting the fire. He's just walking through it. And like, by the way, I'm sure people have looked at this guy's face and figured out exactly who he is, and maybe he's clearly Sandman. And then it's like, oh, sure, the spider tosses this guy into a big fire. It's like, all right, I got him, dead. And then he just comes out, and it's like, oh man, this guy's unkillable. That happens in stuff like this. The other villain we get to look at that I just want to touch on because it's very strange is some sort of spider guy thing. It could be that this is a dream. This character, the spider, clearly gets drunk. He's probably got a lot of flashbacks, a lot of trauma. We don't know how he got the spider bite. I don't think it was from this big weird spider monster thing, but like that's the one that I'm not convinced is a real guy. It could very well be the man spider. It could be like the Grand Weaver, whatever his name is. Could be any number of spider gods, and could be a new thing. Maybe that's Nicolas Cage. Maybe at some point he goes full spider. You do get a couple of other characters, some allies. The big one, I think, is Lamar Morris, who is playing Robbie Robertson. Robbie Robertson traditionally works at the Daily Bugle. He's like Peter Parker's boss. He is more level-headed than J. Jonah Jameson. It's unclear if he is also going to be a detective or if he's going to work for the Bugle or something like the Bugle, but that's cool. That's another character that we have not seen in a very long time, especially not in live action. Like, I don't think we've seen him in live action since like Spider-Man 3. And then the last character of note here, Ben Riley has a secretary named Janet, played by an actor named Karen Rodriguez. We do see her in the trailer as well. This, like, I don't think is based on any Spider-Man character. There are plenty of characters that have served this role for other characters, like other investigators. Obviously, you have Malcolm from Jessica Jones, but I don't know. I also think this character is named Janet. The character that now that I know this is Ben Riley, wouldn't be shocked if we see is a character named Hallows Eve. She is Ben Riley's girlfriend. Originally, she was named Elizabeth Tyne, but she left, changed her name, and was called Janine. I don't think that's what this character is. I wouldn't be surprised if Janine shows up at some point. I also wouldn't be surprised if they're rolling that into what Cat Hardy is too. And let's talk about the creatives behind the project. First of all, one of the most interesting ones for me, production designer, right? Who's going to bring the look of this show to life? Apparently, the production designer's name is Warren Allen Young. He worked on the Fargo shows. Those are very good shows, and I think were very well produced, so that's a great sign. He was also the production designer for the first season of the Runaways show, which I think the first season of that show is quite good. So, like, good sign. Then you got Oren Uziel, who I believe is going to be like the showrunner. His credits are a little bit more all over the place. He wrote the Mortal Kombat reboot movie. It was pretty good. Also, Cloverfield Paradox and an Escape Room sequel. So, like, I don't know about those. But also 22 Jump Street. So there's the Miller and Lord connection. You know, nothing on his resume that I'm in love with. However, I think the Mortal Kombat movie's pretty good. People like The Lost City. Then you've got the director of the show, Harry Bradbeer. So he is directing at least some of the episodes. A lot of the times with stuff like this, they don't put out the information of like who's directing all of them. But again, if we want to look at some of his credits, those two Enola Holmes movies, I've never seen them. Also directed a couple episodes of Killing Eve, which isn't exactly noir, but it is like an espionage show. So you got some of the same elements there. And then the credit I'm most interested in on his resume is Fleabag, which is an excellent show, very well directed. Comedy, which is important because I do think this show, while it's going to take itself very seriously, will still be funny, right? The tagline of the show is with no power comes no responsibility. So this Spider-Man is a real screw up. And finally, not the man-child kind of Star-Lord screw up, but a different kind of like just old guy who's made a lot of mistakes screw up, which is another fun kind of screw up that you don't see in all these movies. This premieres apparently on Amazon Prime. Oh, hi, Mortimer. On May 27th of this year. I was reading this also because this is an Amazon MGM Sony co-production thing. It's apparently premiering on MGM Plus on the 25th, so 2 days earlier. I'm not sure if that's still true. That's unusual, but Sony is one of the last one of these like big studios that does not have a streaming service that they control. So it's always a question I have, at least, of like, why isn't this on Disney Plus? Why didn't Disney buy this? I'm not saying that I think Disney would do a better job. It's just always interesting with Sony because you never know where this stuff's going to end up. So this is going to be a pretty big year for Spider-Man. We are getting a second season of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. We're getting Spider-Man Brand New Day. And we are getting the Spider-Noir show. Interestingly, also, the Spider-Noir show, May, Spider-Man Brand New Day, I believe July, so big summer of Spider-Man, even though 2026 is the year of the X-Men. Sorry, Spider-Man fans, Iron Man fans, you guys have had plenty of time. This is our year. But, you know, I'm curious to see what a success looks like, because also, like I said, this is Sony. Sony loves to announce everything. Like, you name a Spider-Man character, they have been involved in some Spider-Man thing in development at some point. Or like Silver Sable and Black Cat were going to get a movie. Dr. Octopus was going to get a movie. Mysterio was going to get a movie. And I think all those ideas are weird. They could be good, but they might be weird. This makes a lot of sense. It is also interesting because out of the Spider-Man that have been introduced so far into the Spider-Verse, this is clearly the one who is the cheapest to produce a show for, besides Gwen Stacy, who I do imagine they're working on, and I guess that version of Jessica Drew. But like, when you're looking at the characters people really like, they're like, oh, I want a Spider-Man 2099 show, or I want a Spider-Ham show. You know, like maybe Spider-Punk would also be doable on like a realistic budget for a show like this. And I think they are also working on some Spider-Punk stuff. But it's fun, because looking back, yeah, this is the obvious next step for those characters. And, you know, I really hope it succeeds. I really like Nick Cage. I think Spider-Man is cool. I love alternate universe takes on characters we're already kind of familiar with. I love Black Cat. Love Robbie Robertson. It looks great. You know, fingers crossed. Because, you know, speaking of Disney Plus, like, we've seen it all. We've seen highs. We've seen lows. There have been great Disney eras, and there have been not great Disney eras. And that reminds me of a video by one of my favorites, Lindsay Ellis, called Let's Compare and Contrast Disney's Flop Eras. And in the video, Lindsay goes through the various eras of Disney, some of which we remember as huge flops, but some of which with enough time, like you look back at it, you're like, oh, of course that was a success. It's like, no, that was also kind of a flop. And it's really interesting to get that perspective on a studio that's making all these big choices now, like the Snow White movie we just heard lost a bunch of money. I don't think we're going to look back on that in 100 years and be like, that was actually a really great movie. But like, watch that video. It's also an interesting look at kind of how Hollywood processes these things. And if you want to watch that video along with all my videos early and lots of other exclusive videos, you can check out this video sponsor, Nebula. You guys have heard me talk about Nebula before. It is a subscription streaming service that I helped to create. A bunch of us video essayists, and I don't like call myself a content creator, but like content creators got together and were like, hey, these platforms we have to work with, they're great, but they have some problems. And the big one is we wanted to just make great videos, give them to you guys. We wanted to make a nice, clean, well-organized place where you can go to watch all of our videos. They all go up early, so every Nando V Movies video and Nando Cut video go up early. They're all ad-free. You can download them to your phone, which is a feature I don't hear nearly enough people talking about, but is incredibly useful. Like if you don't want to have to eat up all your data or deal with the Wi-Fi at the gym or something, download some videos. You'll have them with you. The videos on Nebula are all made by real people, and that didn't used to have to be a selling point, but now I think it might be the best selling point. There's also all kinds of cool videos you can only find on Nebula. Like Lindsay makes videos almost exclusively for Nebula. One of her most recent videos was about Bluey adults, and the one after that was about dash cam footage, so it really covers a pretty wide spectrum of things. Then you've got short films like Patrick Williams' Dinner Plan, or series like Maggie Mae Fish's Amy's Dead End Dream House. And you have what we haven't like fully announced, but will be coming out sometime next year, our show Subliminal. It's our first like dramatic series. I wrote an episode. I think it's pretty good. I've seen parts of it now because it's like coming together and been edited and all that, and like it looks great. I can't wait for you guys to see it. If you want to support us, give us more opportunities to do cool stuff like that, and you want to see our videos early, ad-free, download them and see other creators on Nebula, because all of your favorite creators and your next few favorite creators are on Nebula right now. Like there's something for everybody. And a yearly subscription to Nebula is $60 for a whole year. That is $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, or the link in the description, or you use the QR code, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an incredible deal. Again, that is go.nebula.tv/thenandocut.